It's raining budget flagships in 2022. After the launch of the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, the OnePlus 9RT, the Xiaomi 11T Pro, the iQOO 9 series, and the Moto H30 Pro, all within the first half of 2022, we now have the Realme GT2 Pro. But is it just performance oriented or does it balance all the feature sets really well? Well, I'm Ershad, you're watching Trakin English, and we shall find the answer to that question and more in our full review of the Realme GT2 Pro and comparison versus the Moto H30 Pro. With the GT2 Pro, Realme has actually experimented with the material used in the industrial design of the phone. It uses industry's very first biopolymer design, which has 35.5% less carbon emissions and is a sustainable design as certified by TCO. To simplify things, it's actually a variant of polycarbonate with a paper-like feel. It does feel very good when you hold it in the hand despite being a big phone, and the texture does add to the grip as well. Moreover, using the sustainable design helps with two things. One, it helps reduce the weight and the thickness of the phone to keep it as low as 189 grams and 8.2 millimeters, making it one of the lightest and thinnest flagships around. And secondly, it helps keep the costs low. And you know what doesn't cost you anything at all is to hit that red subscribe button and the bell icon right next to it to get these free videos coming to you where we put in so much effort to find out which kind of gadgets you should purchase. Also, for the sake of the YouTube algorithm, please hit that like button and maybe even comment below. Although I must mention that the sustainable back rear cover is only on the green and the white variant of the phone. The black one is actually made of glass and it weighs 199 grams. Of course, it's heavier. Also, I did notice that our green variant does have a bit of panel flex, which doesn't inspire confidence in the build quality. So you might have to use the case that you get with the box, or pick up the black variant of the phone, which by the way doesn't come with any Corning Gorilla Glass protection on the rear. Also, I do have another gripe with the design of the phone, which is a functional one. It is the fact that the Realme GT2 Pro comes with a USB Type-C 2.0 port as opposed to the Moto H30 Pro, which has a Type-C 3.0 port. Now coming to the speaker quality, you get stereo speaker setup on both these phones and they get equally loud. But I did notice that thanks to the help of Dolby Atmos, the Realme GT2 Pro does sound thicker and fuller in comparison to the Moto H30 Pro. In fact, why don't you take a listen to it for yourself? Plus, one must appreciate the effort that Realme has actually used sustainable products in the design of the phone, and I genuinely don't feel that sustainability is a gimmick. Having said that, the H30 Pro is not a bad design by any means, and it does look good right next to the Realme GT2 Pro. And for what it is worth, it also offers IP52 rating, which obviously is not available on the GT2 Pro. So when you look at it overall, I'd say that the GT2 Pro is a more visually attractive design, whereas the Moto H30 Pro has a couple of functional advantages. Now, the display of the Realme GT2 Pro is just stunning. I love flat panels, and this one is a 6.7-inch 2K resolution flat panel, of course AMOLED, and you get a DCI-P3 coverage of 100%. You get 1400 nits of peak brightness, a JNCD of 0.5, and LTPO 2.0 technology, which helps refresh the display from 1 Hz to 120 Hz. Forget the specs for a second, and if you take a look at the content, for example, HDR video playback on YouTube, it just looks extremely rich and stunning. It is easily the best display on a Realme phone yet. As for the HDR support on Netflix, you don't get that yet because Netflix hasn't whitelisted the phone. It's going to happen soon, Realme assures us. Now, the touch substrate also offers you 360 Hz of touch sampling rate, which can jump up to 1000 Hz instant touch sampling rate when you're playing games, which is available through software processing on the Realme UI. Now, I don't see a major difference between the two touch sampling rate. In fact, I couldn't even figure out when it was switching. But what I can tell you is that touch sensitivity in Twitch response heavy games like Call of Duty Mobile or Apex Legends is really good on this phone. I also like the fact that the Realme GT2 Pro with its AMOLED display also offers you in-display fingerprint scanner, which is at the right position and unlocks the phone really fast too, as opposed to the Moto H30 Pro, which has a physical in-display fingerprint scanner, which is at the second floor. It's very tough to reach. Now, while the haptic feedback on the Realme GT2 Pro is good enough, you get fairly tight feedback, but it feels slightly light on the vibrations as opposed to something like the Realme 9 Pro Plus, which actually offers tighter vibrations, which is a huge surprise. Also, you get that cool O haptics demo engine, which is not available on the Realme GT2 Pro, which clearly indicates that the 9 Pro Plus has better haptic feedback. Now, if I had to pick between the flat panels on the Moto H30 Pro and the Realme GT2 Pro, easily the Realme GT2 Pro wins hands down. The lower resolution and the lower brightness pales in comparison. No pun intended. Now, the camera setup on the Realme GT2 Pro is very similar to the Moto H30 Pro. I'd say that both these phones have two cameras because those are the most important ones, which is the 50 megapixel main camera on the Realme GT2 Pro with Sony IMX766 sensor and the 50 megapixel fisheye lens. And the third one is a 3 megapixel microscope camera. I find it very fun to use, and you can get some crazy microscope shots. Having said that, that's still better than the 2 megapixel depth sensor on the Moto H30 Pro. So I think that Realme wins on that accord. Anyway, I compared the cameras on these phones and it doesn't seem to look good for the Moto. The details are clearly sharper on the GT2 Pro and you can see finer, sharper textures at close crop. Moto looks soft in comparison. Now, colors are closer to natural looking on the Moto H30 Pro in general. Realme tends to make the key colors, the red, blue and the green, slightly punchier. But what I like about this slight color boost is that it is tastefully done and not gaudy like the Realme 9 Pro Plus. Now, high dynamic range pictures look equally good on both the phones, but the Realme GT2 Pro retrieves slightly more details from the shadows. That's not really a big deal though. Now, with the ultra wide, you do not get color sense consistency on both the phones, but the detail retrieval is near identical. I'd say that these 50 megapixel ultra wide cameras aren't necessarily offering sharper pictures, but yes, the 150-degree field of view on the Realme GT2 Pro is helpful in creating different perspectives, which I absolutely love, and which of course is an added advantage over the Moto H30 Pro. Now, pictures of people when shot in even light are better on the Moto H30 Pro purely for the better facial tones. Sharpness, although, is equally good on both. Now, against the light, both the phones cannot do a proper balancing act. While the H30 Pro has an overexposed background, the GT2 Pro has that very ungainly, overprocessed HDR look. Portraits are also better on the H30 Pro because the edge detection and the background blur is equally good on both, but the H30 Pro offers sharper textures and a more accurate facial tone. Similarly, the Realme GT2 Pro offers nice looking selfies, but the H30 Pro is definitely more accurate in facial tones again. Although yes, Realme is sharper and the portraits look better too. Plus, the highlights correction in the background is more on point in the GT2 Pro. It is overprocessed, yes, but at least you can see my face clearly. Now, until now, I'd say it was a fairly closely fought battle, but the Realme GT2 Pro just humiliates the Moto H30 Pro in low light pictures. The level of detail and sharpness that you can retrieve from the night mode in Realme is way better. The same is true for low light ultra wide shots and low light selfies. The Moto H30 Pro just doesn't stand a chance here. And the Realme GT2 Pro is better at video recording too. While you can shoot 4K 60 FPS videos on both the phones, I've already established that Moto does it at this weird full aspect ratio. Now, the GT2 Pro's footage looks sharper and the sound recording is of way better quality too.
Let me know in the comment section below what you thought about the image quality, the image stabilization and the sound recording. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought about the image quality, the image stabilization and the sound recording.
Moto also keeps focus hunting, which looks god awful. But yes, since the GT2 Pro records BT 2020 colors, you see deeper reds. At 4K 60 FPS, the stabilization is handled by OIS on both the phones, and therefore it looks alright. Thankfully, the situation improves with 4K 30 FPS footage on the Moto H30 Pros somewhat, but the GT2 Pro is still better. And let's not forget, the GT2 Pro can also shoot 8K 24 FPS videos for those who care. I really don't. Ultra wide angle video is just trash on the Moto H30 Pro, which tops out at 1080p 30 FPS. Realme can shoot at 4K 30 FPS and you can see the footage for yourself. It's just better. In front camera video recording, Moto H30 Pro offers 4K resolution and electronic image stabilization, but it crops quite a bit and the facial tones are completely off. The sound recording quality is bad too. The Realme GT2 Pro offers natural looking face colors and way better sound. Now you'll have to figure out what kind of style you prefer when you're shooting selfie videos and take a pic accordingly. Between the two, if I have to put it crudely, the Moto H30 Pro is a flagship phone with budget cameras and the Realme GT2 Pro is a flagship phone with mid-range cameras. I mean, obviously I'm putting it crudely. It's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, but yeah, I mean, you get a perspective of what kind of pictures you can expect from these phones. The Realme GT2 Pro is of course a premium flagship phone, so it comes with Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, LPDDR5 RAM and UFS 3.1 storage as well. And of course you get virtual RAM too. And Realme told us clearly in our briefing that the GT2 Pro is going to get hot because what they're trying to do is that they're not controlling the heat but actually ensuring that the performance doesn't throttle And it is kind of true. In fact, I saw that the performance is very similar to the iQOO 9 Pro as well. And the 3D Mark wildlife stress test numbers are very revealing. The iQOO 9 Pro and the Realme GT2 Pro throttle the least as opposed to phones like the OnePlus 10 Pro and the Moto H30 Pro, as you can see on your screen right now. The iQOO 9 Pro and the Moto H30 Pro, since they push for performance, also lose the most amount of battery and get the hottest as well. Both reached a temperature of 53 degrees while testing. Clearly, there are two approaches to performance tuning with Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. You have to figure out what you prefer. And the moral of the story is that the Realme GT2 Pro does get hot but offers sustained performance. It is a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 problem, really. And the advantage of that is that the GT2 Pro actually plays all games at high settings. I've been playing Apex Legends a lot and I had so much fun on the GT2 Pro because it of course plays at original quality settings. And as for the network performance, you get support for 4G plus, 13 5G bands and great call quality too. Now, the GT2 Pro has a 5000 mAh battery inside and it absolutely needs that 5000 mAh battery because I could only stretch it to 5 hours of screen on time. The battery life is only slightly better than the iQOO 9 Pro, and even now, the Moto H30 Pro is the benchmark for great battery life for a phone with Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor. Now, for charging speeds, Realme hasn't done anything crazy. You still get only that 65 watt charging speeds, but that's good enough. I actually like the charging speeds. You can charge from 0 to 100 in 33 minutes. Although, of course, you don't get wireless charging on the Realme GT2 Pro. That is something that Realme has cut out to save costs. The Realme GT2 Pro runs on Realme UI 3.0 with Android 12, and you get support for 3 years of software updates and 4 years of security updates, which is all very great. But what's not great is the fact that it is preloaded with innumerable bloatware apps. It actually feels like a budget experience and not a flagship experience. Plus, I was really annoyed by the glance implementation. Even if you switch off that toggle, it keeps throwing an ad on the lock screen, which is damn irritating. I absolutely hate that. Also, a lot of folks were complaining about Realme UI 3.0 being very aggressive with battery management and killing apps in the background. I tested it out and unfortunately it's absolutely true. Despite having a well-tuned and feature-rich software, I don't like the fact that Realme is actually following these tactics, which takes away from the whole premium experience that you expect from a flagship phone that costs about Rs 50,000. Easily, the Moto S30 Pro feels more cleaner in software implementation and feels far more refined in comparison. How I see the GT2 Pro is that it nails the display aspect of the phone. The design is actually very good looking too. And of course, you get good sustained performance, but it does get hot. And the cameras are pretty good for the price range. But that software experience is a bit of a letdown, and the battery life is also affected by the powerful Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor. If you look at it, the Realme GT2 Pro is the most expensive Realme phone yet. At the same time, it is also the most affordable phone with Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. Therefore, it becomes sort of like an easy recommendation for folks looking for a phone like this. And that is something that I really want to find out, if people will actually plonk big bucks on a Realme phone when there are more established players like OnePlus and Samsung. Also, compared to the Moto H30 Pro, I'd pick the Realme GT2 Pro primarily because of two reasons. One, the camera performance is better, and secondly, you get a short software updates, which actually Realme has been doing good on, as opposed to Moto H30 Pro, which has been lagging behind. In fact, if you haven't seen it yet, you should see our software updates video. You'll get to know the truth. So what do you guys think of the Realme GT2 Pro? Do you guys like it or not like it? Do you prefer it over the Moto H30 Pro? Do you prefer the Moto H30 Pro? Which you can actually let me know in the comment section below. I hope you guys liked the video. Until next time, this is Ershad signing off. Keep tracking and stay safe.